This is MSNBC Live with Alex Witt, July 28th, 2018.
Reasons why so many of the president's aides and allies have said all along that the Michael Cohen investigation poses far more of a direct threat to the president than does the overall Robert Mueller Russia investigation, Alex.
Okay, Jeff Bennett at the White House. Thank you, Jeff, for that. Well, joining me now, Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu of California. He is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and a frequent guest. It's good to see you again, Congressman. Let's get into it, because I'm curious about your reaction to this claim in regard to the 2016 Trump Tower meeting. How does it fit into all that has transpired so far in the Mueller investigation, as well as all the congressional panels?
Thank you, Alex, for your question. Michael Cohen's expected testimony would place Donald Trump in the center of a potential conspiracy to interfere in the American elections with a foreign power. That is a crime. And it also opens up all sorts of possibilities, because if the president knew that the Russians were doing this, what else did he know about the Russian operation in 2016? That's why we need these investigations to continue without any political interference. And in terms of congressional investigations, I think the more evidence we learn, really the stupider the House Republicans on the Intelligence Committee look when they shut down their investigation prematurely and really whitewashed what happened.
I'm curious who has more credibility in your mind, given both of their conflicted relationships with the truth, the president or Michael Cohen?
The Washington Post has been tracking the president's statements, as well as the New York Times, and they've documented thousands of false and misleading statements that the President of the United States has made. There is no question Michael Cohen has more credibility than Donald Trump.
Is that in your mind because he has tapes, he has notes, he has conversations, that kind of thing?
Certainly the tapes back up what Michael Cohen said with regards to now a separate potential felony, which is a campaign finance violation with the payment to silence Karen McDougal. So definitely the tapes help Michael Cohen, and there is probably reporting now that there may be hundreds of these tapes.
What are the chances about Donald Trump Jr. being brought back to testify before your committee, and how much trouble is he really in?
I'm on the House Judiciary Committee, and let me just tell you where the Republicans are on this committee. Instead of doing anything on the FBI or Department of Justice or Russia in terms of what their interference in American elections was, we did hearings on whether the group Diamond and Silk should get more Facebook likes. So that's where the House Republicans are. I don't think we're going to call in Donald Trump Jr., but Michael Cohen's testimony does also place Trump Jr. in jeopardy, because he did apparently lie to Congress by saying his father knew nothing about this meeting.
Your comment there on what the Judiciary Committee is actually doing right now just caused a blank stare. That's all I have to say from you. I was like, what? Anyway, the op-ed that you wrote, which says tapes don't lie, even if the president does. This was after the recording that Cohen made of a discussion with the president about money to Playboy model Karen McDougal was leaked. I want to play you what Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, said about this last night. Here it is.
I have 3 clients that have hired me as their counsel. Each of them had a relationship with Mr. Trump. Each of them were paid hush money prior to the 2016. But
does
ultimately,
at least one of them involve AMI?
yes,
And that would be a previously undisclosed. It's not Karen McDougal, correct?
correct.
Put on your hat as a former prosecutor. I'm curious how big a deal this is to you.
It is a big deal for 2 reasons. First, as a former prosecutor, I know that when defendants keep changing their stories, they tend to be lying. So the first story was, none of this is true. This is regarding Karen McDougal, Stormy Daniels. Then it was, well, Michael Cohen did it all by himself. And now we know that Donald Trump was in on it. And then we have the pattern and practice. Now that we have multiple women, it looks like it's a pattern and practice of what Donald Trump was doing the entire time, silencing these women. And so we need to continue to have investigations. That's why Representative Kathleen Rice and I earlier called for an investigation from the FBI into this very issue.
How certain are you, as you alluded to before in this conversation, how certain are you that the president knew before the June 2016 meeting that it was going to transpire?
In terms of the Trump Tower meeting, it would seem highly unlikely that the president had no idea. Why would Trump Jr. not tell his father? Why would Jared Kushner not tell his father-in-law? This seemed like a pretty significant meeting. You've got the Russians offering dirt on Hillary Clinton, and then you've got the president going on national TV telling the Russians to basically hack Hillary Clinton. There's a lot of coincidences that only make sense if Donald Trump knew about this meeting in advance.
The president also talked about on television saying, you know, big news was going to be forthcoming, didn't he? And about Hillary Clinton, and then nothing was said a few days later.
That is also very coincidental timing that, again, makes a lot more sense if Donald Trump himself knew about this meeting in advance, that he might get dirt on Hillary Clinton that looked like it may not have materialized at that specific meeting.
Because you're a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I want to ask you about your take on Vladimir Putin inviting the president to Moscow. This, of course, after the president had said that he was going to delay the expected meeting in Washington, which he originally said would be in the fall. Now it's going to happen next year, allegedly, according to his plan. What's happening here?
Well, so let me first say, until Putin accepts responsibility for ordering the Russian military to attack American elections in 2016, and until he stops attacking our elections, the U.S. Commander-in-Chief should never set foot in Russia. And I am very disturbed that Donald Trump is thinking of going to Russia. Until he gets Russia to acknowledge what they did to our elections, he should not be going into Moscow.
And you're meaning Russian military intelligence? Is that what you're meaning?
That's correct. The GRU officers that were indicted by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, they are an arm of the Russian military.
What about what you introduced in terms of bipartisan legislation in light of Putin wanting to interrogate a dozen American officials? Are you getting any sense at all that Republicans are willing to take a more aggressive approach despite the president's words and the president's actions on this matter and really delve into election meddling?
Somewhat. Having served on active duty, I never thought that the U.S. Commander-in-Chief would go to Helsinki and kowtow to a foreign power, and I really never ever thought that the U.S. Commander-in-Chief would contemplate giving up Americans for interrogation by their Russians. That was so outrageous that I introduced a bipartisan resolution, and we single out Russia for doing this and the Trump administration for even thinking about giving up these Americans. And I am pleased it's bipartisan, and we did see a number of Republicans speak up about what their president did in Helsinki.
Before I let you go, sir, I want to get your take on the status of family reunifications. You have the Senate Judiciary Committee, which has scheduled a hearing for Tuesday on oversight of the matter. But do you think the hearing is going to answer any questions about why there are hundreds of children still separated from their parents?
I applaud the Senate for doing a hearing. It is long overdue. We know the Trump administration missed their deadline for reunifying all the parents with their kids. What's deeply disturbing are two things. One is, we know from public reporting, some of these kids have been assaulted, including sexually assaulted, at some of these detention centers. And second, the Trump administration has said that some of these kids may never be reunified with their parents. And if these parents and kids want to be reunified and they're not, that is then the functional equivalent of kidnapping by our government. That is completely unacceptable. That's why Secretary Nielsen needs to resign.
Representative Ted Lieu, thank you very much for the conversation. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Alex.
Coming up next, he's being called President Trump's worst nightmare, but will Michael Cohen's secret recordings come back to haunt him, and why the collusion